Welcome to Vivid Verses. If our words resonate with you, please subscribe, tap the like, and share your thoughts and your feelings in the comments. Now let's begin. This is an after-action report. We aren't doing a post-mortem on feelings. We are conducting a structural analysis of a system failure and the subsequent containment protocol. If you want to understand why I dismantled a domestic partnership and evicted a cohabitant in the span of 45 minutes, you have to understand the operational context. In my line of work, the margin for error is non-existent. I optimize high-volume logistics networks. You don't get points for effort in supply chain management. You get paid for redundancy, efficiency, and the elimination of friction. When a link in the chain weakens, you don't paint over it. You cut it out and replace it before the load causes a catastrophic snap. I apply the same methodology to my personal life. The objective was the Kaneshiro Group. I've been orchestrating a complete overhaul of their North American distribution network for 8 months. This isn't just moving boxes. It's a $40 million contract involving cold chain integration, cross-border tariff mitigation, and a complete restructuring of their labor agreements. The deal hinged on a single variable: trust. The technicals were sound. The logistics were optimized. But Kaneshiro is an old-world organization. They don't buy the spreadsheet. They buy the man who built it. They need to know that the person holding the keys to their inventory is stable, disciplined, and incapable of being rattled. Miller, their VP of operations, is the gatekeeper. He's 60, former military logistics, and operates on a frequency of absolute stoicism. He views volatility as a character defect. If he senses you're insecure, easily manipulated, or professionally immature, he walks. He assumes that if your personal life is messy, your paperwork will be too. I brought Grace. At the time, the decision was calculated based on previous performance data. Grace's was socially adept. She works in mid-level PR for a boutique firm. She understands the currency of perception. For the first 3 months of our arrangement, she was a net positive. She softened my edges. I tend to be clinical. She provided the necessary social lubrication that made me palatable to clients who need to feel liked before they sign checks. She knew when to smile, when to ask about the client's wife, and when to be quiet. However, the asset had been depreciating. Over the last 6 weeks, I tracked a shift in her baseline behavior. It started with minor insubordination in private, correcting my grammar, questioning my schedule, making jokes about my routines. I organized my wardrobe by utility. She called it psychotic. I eat the same breakfast to minimize decision fatigue. She called it sad. I flagged these incidents but didn't act. I needed more data to confirm if this was a temporary anomaly or a new pattern of disrespect. In my business, you don't fire a vendor over one late shipment, but you watch the tracking numbers like a hawk. The dinner with Miller was the stress test. We took my car, an S-Class. It's not a vanity purchase. It's a controlled environment. Double pane glass, active noise cancellation, suspension that erases potholes. I need the drive to the venue to be a decompression chamber where I can run the simulations for the meeting. Traffic on the I-95 was stopped. A jackknifed rig 3 miles up had closed 2 lanes. The delay was manageable. I built a 30-minute buffer into every schedule, but it increased the ambient tension of the approach. I was running the talking points on the union renegotiations in the Midwest hub. I needed to explain to Miller why we were cutting the 3rd shift at the Dayton facility without making it sound like a retreat. It had to be framed as an optimization of throughput, not a cost-saving measure. Grace was in the passenger seat. She was scrolling through Instagram, the blue light reflecting off her glasses. She sighed, a loud, sharp exhale meant to signal boredom. "You're doing that thing," she said. I didn't look over. I was watching the brake lights of the sedan in front of us, calculating the flow rate of the merging traffic. What thing? The robot thing. You go into power save mode. It's creepy. You just stare at the road. I'm reviewing the Kaneshiro file in my head. I said, Miller's going to bring his associate, Stevens. Stevens is the attack dog. He's 20 years younger than Miller, Wharton MBA, looking to make a name for himself. He's going to try to poke holes in the projection to look smart in front of the boss. I need to be ready to plug them. You worry too much, she said. She put her phone down and looked at me. Just be yourself. Or, well, be a warmer version of yourself. Smile. Ask about his grandkids. People don't care about the numbers, Finn. They care about the vibe. You're so stiff lately. The vibe doesn't move 40,000 units of perishable goods across state lines, I said, keeping my voice level. Competence does, and Stevens will be looking for incompetence. She rolled her eyes. I saw the motion in my peripheral vision. See? That. Don't do that. You sound like an instruction manual. Let me handle the charm. You just nod and pay the bill. I'll make you look human. I noted the phrasing. Let me handle the charm. Make you look human. She was establishing a dependency. She wanted to be the interface between me and the world, rendering me the silent back-end processor while she controlled the user experience. It was a subtle power grab, an attempt to position herself as the translator for my supposed social deficits. We arrived at the Capitol Grill at 1855, 5 minutes early. Perfect. The venue was chosen for its acoustics. High-back booths, mahogany paneling, heavy drapes, carpeted floors. Sound doesn't travel here. You can speak in low tones and still be heard, which is essential for dominance. Shouting is for amateurs. Authority is whispered. Miller was already there, which was a power move. He was at the bar, nursing a scotch. Beside him was Stevens. Stevens was exactly as the dossier suggested. 30 years old, wearing a suit that was too tight in the European style, a watch that cost more than his annual bonus, and the restless energy of a man who thinks he's the smartest person in the room. He was the threat vector. Miller was the judge, but Stevens was the prosecutor. We made the approach. Handshakes. Firm, dry, 2 pumps. Eye contact held for 3 seconds. Finn, Miller said. Good to see you. Miller. This is Grace. Grace turned on the high beams. So nice to finally meet the legend, she said, extending a hand. It was a bit much, calling a logistics VP a legend, but Miller smiled. It worked. It stroked the ego. We moved to the table. The seating arrangement is politics. I took the seat facing the door, habit, but also strategy. I want to see the room. Miller sat opposite me. Stevens sat diagonal to me, Grace diagonal to Miller. This put Stevens in my peripheral vision, which was suboptimal, but it put Grace directly in Miller's line of sight. The first hour was technical. This was the proving ground. We ordered drinks. I stuck to sparkling water. Miller had wine. Stevens ordered a complex cocktail that required the waiter to explain the ingredients. Grace ordered a Chardonnay. We covered the Q3 projections and the logistics of the cold chain integration. I was operating at peak efficiency. I anticipated Stevens' questions before he asked them. What about the redundancy in the Memphis hub? Stevens asked, leaning forward, tapping a manicured finger on the tablecloth. If the union strikes in December, we're bottlenecked. The entire eastern seaboard shuts down. It doesn't, I said, slicing into my steak. I've already lined up independent contractors in Nashville and Louisville as a contingency. We could divert 60% of the volume within 4 hours using non-union freight. The unions know this. It weakens their leverage, which is why they won't strike. The threat is a bluff. Miller nodded. He liked that. He took a sip of wine. Contingencies, he muttered. I like contingencies. You've thought about the fuel surcharges. Locked in at last quarter's rates for the next 6 months? I replied. We hedged the diesel costs against the futures market. Miller sat back. The interrogation was over. I had passed. I could feel the tension leaving his shoulders. He was ready to sign. The trust was established. I had demonstrated that I was a fortress. Nothing got in, nothing got out. Everything was accounted for. Then the conversation pivoted. The business was done. Now came the social vetting. This is the danger zone. This is where you have to prove you are a human being, not just a calculator. Miller needed to know if he would enjoy having a beer with me once the contract was signed. Miller signaled the waiter for another bottle of Cabernet. He looked at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. I have to say, Finn, you know the floor operations better than my own regional managers. I heard a rumor you started on the loading dock. Is that right? This is a standard narrative building block. It establishes grit. It creates a hierarchy of competence. I know the work because I've done the work. I know how heavy the boxes are. It is, I said, 2 years packing pallets in Jersey. You learn quickly that the spreadsheet map isn't the terrain. It teaches you to respect the friction. Miller smiled, a genuine smile. Grit. I respect that. Too many guys in this business have never lifted a box. They think logistics is a video game. This was the apex of the evening. My status was high. Stevens was neutralized. He was checking his phone under the table. Miller was impressed. The deal was effectively closed. Then Grace spoke. She let out a laugh. It was sharp, performative, and too loud for the room. It cut through the ambient noise like a dropped glass. "Oh, stop," she said. She reached out and patted my hand. The touch wasn't affectionate. It was possessive, patronizing. It was the way you pat a dog that has performed a trick. Don't let him fool you with the hard man backstory. It's cute, but let's be real. The table went still. Stephen's head snapped up. He smelled blood. Miller paused with his glass halfway to his mouth. Grace continued, looking at Miller, inviting him into a conspiracy against me. She was glowing with the attention. When I met him, he was living in this awful shoebox apartment. He didn't even have a bed frame, just a mattress on the floor like a college kid. He couldn't figure out how to file his own taxes. I practically had to dress him for his first interview. She giggled. He was such a mess before I fixed him. Honestly, he's lucky I came along, or he'd still be eating ramen in the dark. Structured damage. Critical. Let's analyze the component parts of this attack. It wasn't just a bad joke. It was a systematic dismantling of the persona I had just spent 2 hours building. First, she contradicted my narrative of self-made competence. I projected operator. She projected dependent. Second, she infantilized me. Mattress on the floor, couldn't file taxes. These are markers of a child, not a $40 million logistics expert. If I can't manage my own tax filings, how can I manage Kanashiro's international tariff compliance? Third, she claimed ownership of my success. I fixed him. She was taking credit for the product. Fourth, she framed it as a joke. This is the trap. If I laugh, I accept the frame. I admit that I'm a project she manages. I lose Miller's respect instantly. A man who is managed by his girlfriend cannot manage a hostile takeover. If I get angry, I look insecure. I become the man who can't take a joke. I look volatile. Stevens wins. It was a dominance display. She was elevating her status by cannibalizing mine. She was signaling to the tribe that she was the power behind the throne. I felt the physiological response. Adrenaline spike. Heat in the neck. The fight or flight mechanism engaging. I suppressed it immediately. Emotional reaction is a leak. I needed a tactical response. I didn't move my hand from under hers. I didn't pull away. That would be a retreat. I went completely still. I stopped blinking. I focused my gaze on the bridge of her nose. I shut down all micro-expressions. The silence began to expand. In a social dynamic, rhythm is cooperative. Person A speaks, person B responds. When person B refuses to respond, the rhythm collapses. The silence becomes a vacuum. It sucks the oxygen out of the immediate vicinity. 1 second. Grace smiled, waiting for the polite laughter. 2 seconds. Miller shifted in his seat. He looked at his wine glass. He was uncomfortable. He hates discomfort. 3 seconds. Stevens looked at me, then at Grace. He realized this wasn't a joke anymore. It was an execution. For seconds, Grace's smile faltered. Her eyes darted around the table. She looked at Miller, then Stevens, looking for an ally. She found none. The social pressure was now entirely on her. "Grace," I said. My tone was flat. No anger. No hurt. Just a neutral request for data. The voice of an auditor finding a discrepancy. "Explain to the table why you feel the need to disrespect me in front of my peers." The sentence was constructed carefully. I didn't say, "Why did you say that?" which invites a defense or an explanation of the joke. I defined the action, disrespect. I defined the audience, peers. I stripped away the joke camouflage and laid the aggression bare on the white tablecloth. She blinked rapidly. Her face flushed a deep, blotchy red. She laughed again, but this time it was a nervous tick, a dry sound. "God, Finn," she stammered. "It was just a joke. You have no sense of humor." Gaslighting. Standard defensive maneuver. Attempting to shift the defect to the receiver. "I am not aggressive. You are humorless." I didn't break eye contact. I held it. I wanted her to feel the weight of the error. "Humor is funny," I said. That was a derogatory fabrication meant to lower my status, to elevate your own. It didn't work, but it did reveal a great deal about your character. I let that hang. I wanted Stevens to hear it. I wanted him to see that I dissect threats. I don't react to them. I wanted Miller to see that I handle personnel issues swiftly and publicly. Grace opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. She shrank. Physically, she seemed to lose 2 inches of height. She picked up her wine glass, her hand trembling slightly, and took a drink. She looked away, staring at a point on the wall. The threat was neutralized. The saboteur was contained. Now the pivot. If I lingered on the moment, I would look like a bully. I needed to show that she was insignificant enough to be ignored. I had to discard the distraction and return to the mission. I turned my head slowly back to Miller. I reset my facial expression to professional interest. "The warehouse experience was vital," I said, picking up the sentence exactly where she had interrupted it, as if the last 2 minutes had never happened. "It taught me that the bottleneck is usually in the manifest protocol, not the loading dock. That's why we need to rewrite the software integration for the Toronto facility." Miller stared at me. He was stunned. He looked at Grace, who was now staring at the tablecloth, effectively invisible. Then he looked back at me. A slow realization dawned in his eyes. He saw the control. He saw the compartmentalization. He saw a man who could step over a casualty and keep marching. He nodded. "Agreed," he said. His voice was serious, respectful. "Let's talk about the software." For the next 45 minutes, Grace ceased to exist. I didn't look at her. I didn't speak to her. I didn't acknowledge her presence. When the waiter came to refill water, I moved my glass, but I didn't check hers. I effectively ghosted her while she was sitting 3 feet away. This is the ultimate social penalty: exclusion. Stevens didn't make a single snide comment for the rest of the night. He was terrified. He saw what happened to the person I was sleeping with. He didn't want to find out what happened to the competition. By the time the check came, the hierarchy was absolute. I was the alpha. Miller was the partner. Stevens was the subordinate. Grace was the furniture. I paid the bill. Corporate card. I walked Miller to the door. "I'll have the contract sent over Monday," I said. "I look forward to it," Miller said. He shook my hand firmly. He didn't say goodbye to Grace. He knew she wasn't part of the package anymore. He understood the social signal I had sent. She is no longer relevant. The valet brought the car. I tipped him $20. I walked around to the driver's side. Grace was standing on the curb. She looked shell-shocked. The alcohol and the humiliation had mixed into a volatile cocktail. She was shivering, though it wasn't cold. "Finn," she hissed. "That was psychotic." I got in the car. I started the engine. I waited. She got in, slamming the door hard enough to rock the chassis. "You embarrassed me," she said, her voice rising to a pitch that hurt the ears. "In front of them. You made me look like an idiot." I checked the mirrors and pulled out into traffic. The city lights slid over the hood of the car. I kept the speed steady. "You embarrassed yourself," I said. "I just clarified the situation. I was joking. Couples roast each other. It's what people do. It shows we're comfortable." "Not in my world," I said. "In my world, loyalty is the baseline. You signaled to a potential client that I am incompetent. You tried to leverage my reputation to buy yourself a moment of attention. That is a breach of contract." "Contract?" She laughed, a hysterical sound. "We're in a relationship, not a business deal." "Everything is a deal," I said. "A relationship is an exchange of value. I provide security, stability, a lifestyle, and a future. You provide support, loyalty, and partnership. You defaulted on your end. You became a liability." "You talk like a robot," she screamed. "Do you have any feelings at all?" "I have priorities," I said. "My reputation puts food on the table. You try to starve us to feed your ego." I drove the rest of the way in silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I let the silence do the heavy lifting. I spent the drive calculating the logistics of the extraction. 1. Tenancy. She moved in 6 months ago. The lease is in my name. She is not on the deed. 2. Possessions. Her contributions are consumable: food, toiletries, soft goods. She has clothes, a laptop, and some books. It's a low-complexity move. 3. Access. The locks are electronic. I can reset the code from my phone. She tried to engage twice more. She tried anger. And she tried bargaining. "Finn, seriously, stop the car. Let's talk about this." "I'm sorry, okay?" I drank too much wine. I was nervous. Miller was intimidating. I ignored the excuses. Reasons don't alter results. If a driver crashes a truck because he was tired, the cargo is still destroyed. We pulled into the driveway. The garage door opened. We pulled inside. The door closed behind us. The world was locked out. I turned off the engine. The silence in the garage was deafening. The ticking of the cooling engine block was the only sound. "I don't build a life with saboteurs," I said. She stared at me, eyes wide. "What does that mean?" "It means you're done." "Done? I want you out." "When?" "Tonight." "You're crazy," she said, her voice trembling. "It's midnight. I live here. You can't just kick me out." I got out of the car. I walked into the house. The air was cool, conditioned to exactly 68 degrees. It felt like a clean space. A space I needed to protect from contamination. She followed me, heels clicking frantically on the hardwood floor. "Finn, stop. We could talk about this tomorrow." "I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear?" "I'm sorry I told the story. I won't do it again." I walked into the kitchen. I opened the cabinet under the sink. I took out a box of contractor bags, 3 millimeters thick, tear-resistant, black. I tossed the roll onto the marble island. It made a heavy, definitive thud. "This isn't about an apology," I said, turning to face her. "An apology doesn't fix a structural flaw. You revealed who you are. You're someone who will undercut me to feed your own insecurity. I can't build a foundation on that. It's unsafe. If you do it at dinner, you'll do it when I'm vulnerable. You'll do it when we have kids. You're a security risk." I looked at my watch. "You have friends in the city. Sarah lives in the Loop. Call her, or I will pay for a suite at the Four Seasons. I don't care where you go, but you're not sleeping under my roof tonight." "You can't do this," she screamed. She was crying now, mascara running down her face. It was a chaotic display. I can. It's my house. You're a guest who has overstayed their welcome. I leaned against the counter. I crossed my arms. You have 20 minutes to pack your essentials. Toiletries, clothes for work tomorrow, electronics. You can come back Saturday with a mover to get the rest. I will have the boxes ready in the garage, so you don't have to come inside. She looked at the trash bags. She looked at my face. She was searching for the crack in the armor. She wanted me to be the mess she described at dinner. She wanted me to be emotional, so she could manipulate the emotion. She wanted to fight, because a fight implies I still care. But I was just a man solving a logistics problem. I was removing a bottleneck. I hate you, she whispered. That's irrelevant, I said. Start packing. She stood there for another 10 seconds, waiting for me to break. When she realized I wouldn't, she grabbed the bags. She ran upstairs. I heard a door slam, then the sound of drawers being ripped open. I didn't follow her. I didn't supervise. I trust the physics of the situation. She wants to leave as much as I want her to go now. I went into my study. I sat down at my desk. I woke up my computer. The 3 monitors glowed to life. The blue light was calming. I opened the Kaneshiro file. I needed to draft the email to Miller confirming the software protocols we discussed. I needed to strike while the iron was hot, while the impression of my competence was still fresh in his mind. Upstairs, there was crying. The thud of a suitcase being dragged across the floor. The chaotic sounds of a life being dismantled. I focused on the screen. Subject: follow-up/integration protocols/next steps. Mr. Miller, regarding the API latency discussed at dinner, I have reviewed the architecture. We can bypass the legacy server by routing directly through the cloud node in Virginia. This will reduce latency by 40 milliseconds. Additionally, I appreciated the conversation regarding the warehouse protocols. It is rare to find a partner who understands the ground-level realities. Attached is the revised timeline. 15 minutes later, she came down. She had a suitcase and 2 trash bags of clothes slung over her shoulder. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were red. She looked destroyed. She stood at the door of the study. I hope you're happy alone, she spat. You're going to end up a lonely, bitter old man with nothing but your money. I didn't look up from the keyboard. I'm not alone, I said. I'm functional. The front door opened. The front door closed. I listened. I heard the Uber pull up. I heard the trunk open. I heard the car door slam. I heard it drive away. I picked up my phone. I opened the smart home app. I selected the front door lock. Reset code. New code generated. I put the phone down. The house was quiet. The air was still. The variable had been removed. The system was secure. My pulse was 64 beats per minute. I turned back to the monitors. The numbers balanced. The structure was sound. I worked until 3 a.m. It was some of the best work I've ever done. Thank you for listening. That brings today's story to a close. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. See you next time.